Danielle was halfway through reheating pasta when I told her about the offer. She didn't blink, just kept stirring, calm as ever, like I'd said we needed more milk. Then she smiled that polished smile she used in front of brand clients and said, "I'm proud of you." We'd been married 9 years. She knew every version of me. Floor trader on the NYSE, late-night spreadsheet zombie, the guy who didn't like birthdays. So yeah, when she used her marketing voice on me, I noticed. But I let it go. The Midtown firm had scouted me. Financial consultant gig, heavy accounts, lean team, real bonuses if I could land new assets. Base was better than my old trading draw. I told her that up front. She nodded and asked, "What's the upside range?" Not, "What's the work like?" Not, "Will it be good for you?" Just the numbers. She got the answer she wanted. We were also in the middle of something else. Doctors, blood work, follow-ups. 3 years of trying, and every test I took came back with the same low count and worse odds. I didn't say much, just stared at the white tile on the clinic floor and clenched my jaw. Danielle held my hand, but I felt her thumb twitch once, like she was trying to pull back. I said we could adopt. She looked at me like she was waiting for a script to load, then finally said, "Yeah, let's look into it." I should have seen the pause for what it was. Before we continue, tell us in the comments which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today. Thanks. And now the story. 3 agencies, 8 interviews, a pile of paperwork that felt like closing on a house while blindfolded. I treated it like a project, organized, logical, fixable. Then came Daisy, 5 years old, bright eyes, messy ponytail, jokes about imaginary pets named Muffin and Ketchup. She wasn't scared of us, just curious, like she was interviewing us. The day we brought her home, Danielle documented every second for her close friends story on social. I burned the pancakes and overdid the vanilla. Daisy said they tasted like cookies. I laughed and wiped my face before anyone could see. Later that night, I folded this tiny pink jacket that still had the price tag half on. Something about it, how small it was, how real, it cracked something in me. I cried. Quiet, stupid, unfixable crying. Danielle smiled on camera, then sat in the shower for 30 minutes. I heard the water running and didn't knock. Figured she needed space. Figured we all did. After that, I switched to what I knew. Provider mode, mortgage on time, groceries in the fridge, backup plans on a whiteboard. Daisy got her own cubby by the door with little hooks for her coats. I thought it meant we were pulling forward. We weren't fighting. We weren't talking either. Just ticking boxes. If you'd asked me then what mattered most, I'd have said, make it stable. Like that could cure grief before it even showed up. One Friday night, Danielle came home from some shoot with red wine and a smile like she wanted to forget something. We watched a movie, didn't finish it, and she fell asleep before Daisy's nightlight turned off. I sat at the kitchen table going over my Monday client deck. Clean numbers, predictable patterns. They made sense in a way people didn't. That's when I promised myself, whatever this was turning into, I'd keep it together. For Daisy. For me. For the version of us we were still trying to be. And when Danielle's alarm went off at 6 the next morning, I was already dressed, bag packed, dishwasher running. I kissed her cheek and walked out the door. I left the apartment early, same as always, stepping into that cold stretch of hallway where the lights hummed and the air smelled like detergent from the overnight cleanup. Work was waiting, and I liked the weight of it. It reminded me of who I was before everything got complicated. By the time I hit the street, the sky was clouded over, and the wind pushed rain sideways across Midtown like someone tipped a bucket over the city. I tightened my coat, checked my phone, and kept moving toward the office. That first year in the new job came in relentless, week after week. I had client calls before sunrise, markets kicking up by 9:30, and a kid who tugged my sleeve after dinner asking if I wanted to play hopscotch in the living room because the sidewalk chalk washed away in the rain. I kept saying, yeah, in a minute, then realized an hour had passed, and she was already drawing on printer paper instead. I told myself that was normal. Busy dad, big job, new routines. It sounded logical. Inside the apartment, Danielle moved like she was rehearsing for something. Her social feed looked pristine. Perfect lighting, warm colors, soft captions about balance and gratitude. Then she'd come into the kitchen, drop a mug, stare out the window at nothing, and rub her forehead like someone trying to erase a thought. I asked if she wanted help with dinner, and she'd say, "I'm fine," in this flat tone that didn't match the curated calm she posted online. I should have pushed harder. I didn't. I thought the dinners out and the sitter on Fridays meant we were healing. Looking back, those nights were more like breathers between storms I didn't know were happening. I asked if she was all right a few times, and she smiled, said she was tired. I accepted that answer because I was tired too. A Tuesday in late November took the whole thing and snapped it in half. It rained from dawn to night, nonstop, thick drops pounding the pavement so loud it felt like background static. I was finishing a call with a client in Texas when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut made me answer. The voice on the line was a detective, calm, clipped, trained for bad news. He told me Danielle's car had gone off an embankment into the East River near a construction access path. They saw skid marks, broken railing, and part of her license plate drifting near the rocks. I felt my throat seize and asked if she was alive. He said they didn't find a body yet. Divers were searching. The current was rough. I grabbed my jacket and bolted past my team without answering a single question. Outside, the rain hit so hard it soaked through my shirt before I reached the corner. I kept dialing Danielle's phone. It rang and rang, then switched to dead silence like the line gave up. When I reached the precinct, the detective brought me into a room that smelled like wet jackets and old paper. He told me they had footage from a traffic cam, a grainy clip showing Danielle's car pulling to the shoulder. An older woman climbed in on the passenger side. No struggle, no rush. Just a shape in a coat, climbing inside like she'd been invited. "Do you recognize her?" the detective asked. "I don't know who that is," I said, and the words felt thin. He started listing theories. Maybe Danielle panicked. Maybe she meant to end things. Maybe she tried to swim out. A dozen maybe scenarios that made me want to rip the table in half, because maybe doesn't give a kid her mother back. I left and stood on the promenade near the river, watching barges drift through the fog like slow, tired giants. I counted them even though it meant nothing. It kept my hands from shaking. That night, Daisy crawled into my lap with her hair still damp from the bath. She looked straight at me and asked, "Did Mom get lost?" I swallowed whatever was in my throat and told her sometimes grown-ups don't know the map either. She nodded like she understood, then curled against me until she fell asleep. The next day, work started moving again. Markets didn't care that my life had cracked open. Schedules didn't bend. I answered clients, managed accounts, kept my voice steady, and ignored the looks people gave me when they realized something was wrong. If I stopped moving, I'd drown. So I didn't stop. At night, when Daisy finally slept, I sat on the couch with the enhanced still from the traffic footage. The older woman's face was blurred and shadowed, but something in her posture stuck with me. Shoulders drawn in, chin tucked, like someone who'd lived too many hard seasons. I printed the still, slid it into a folder, and kept it in my desk at the office. Every weekend I walked the city with that picture in hand. Under overpasses, near soup kitchens, at subway entrances where people lined up with carts and bags. I showed the photo to volunteers and workers and anyone who looked like they might recognize her. Some squinted and shook their head. Some didn't look at all. No one knew her. Rain, snow, cold, crowds. It didn't matter. I kept searching. I told myself if I found her, I'd get answers. I'd understand the last minutes of Danielle's life. I'd make sense of the hole in my living room where her shoes used to sit. One Sunday evening, I slipped the photo back into my pocket and headed home through wet sidewalks and taxi horns. Daisy had taped one of her drawings to the front door, 4 stick figures holding hands. She'd written "us" above them in thick marker. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, dropping my keys harder than I meant to. The apartment was too quiet. I didn't call out Danielle's name. I didn't expect her to answer. I just hung up my coat, turned on the hallway light, and kept going. I kicked off my shoes by the door and heard the hum of the radiator working overtime. It had been snowing for hours, thick flakes, slow and heavy, coating everything like the city had stopped to take a breath. I wasn't supposed to be home yet, but a late client bailed last minute, so I grabbed the early train. The second I stepped in, something felt off. 2 mismatched mugs sat on the coffee table, steam still rising from one. A coat hung unevenly near the radiator, damp sleeves dripping onto the hardwood. One of Daisy's socks was half off, left beside a pair of boots that definitely weren't mine. I looked down. 1 small shoe print, 1 large. "Daisy?" I called out, sharper than I meant to. She popped out from the hallway with wide eyes and pink cheeks, the kind of look she gave when she knew she'd crossed a line. Her voice came out fast and too practiced. "I was just playing pretend." She was cold. "It's just tea, Daddy, I promise." I stepped forward. "Who's she, Daisy?" She broke, hugged my waist and buried her face in my coat. "Please don't be mad. She's nice. I didn't want her to freeze." That's when I opened the hallway closet. She was standing there, hands clasped in front of her like she was ready for judgment. The same woman from the grainy still, same sunken cheeks, same worn expression. The scarf was red, faded to rust. Her eyes, though, her eyes didn't flinch. "You were in my wife's car," I said. My voice wasn't steady, and I didn't care. "What happened that day?" She stepped out of the closet slow, like any sudden move might set off something worse. "My name's Evelyn Patterson. I'm 75. I used to teach literature at Brooklyn Central. I'm not on anything. No alcohol, no meds. I'd been sleeping rough near the park and asked for a ride to the shelter." She paused. "Your wife offered." Daisy still clung to my side. Evelyn didn't look at her. She looked at me like this was a court date. She didn't seem scared. She was upbeat. Took a call while we drove. She said the man's name like she knew him well. Landon. She called him Landon. That name ripped through me like a wire snapping. Landon Barnes. Insurance. Same graduating class. Same fundraisers. Same smile that never reached his eyes. I hadn't thought about him in years. "You're sure that was the name?" "Clear as anything," she told him. "I'll be there in 20. Then smiled at me and said I reminded her of her old English teacher. I exhaled hard. The radiator hissed behind me like it knew the next part wouldn't be good. I looked down at Daisy. "She didn't mean to scare you, sweetheart. She was just cold," I said, brushing her hair back. "I made her tea," Daisy whispered, "and I gave her the honey we hide." I looked back at Evelyn. She hadn't moved. She looked exhausted but upright. Not begging, not making excuses. Just waiting. "I'm going to ask you one thing," I said. "Did you know what she was planning?" "No," she said, calm and clear. "I only rode a few blocks. She dropped me at the shelter. That's the last I saw her." "You didn't tell anyone?" "I didn't know what happened until months later. By then I didn't have ID. Didn't think the cops would believe me. I thought I'd just get locked up." She didn't try to bolt. That stuck with me. She didn't flinch or argue. She apologized for my loss like it wasn't gossip. It was real. And Daisy reached out and took her hand. That cracked something in me I didn't want to name. "You can stay tonight," I said. "We talk in the morning, but there are rules." Evelyn nodded. "Understood." I messaged building security, told them I was approving a temporary guest, gave her name and birthday, said she was family. I didn't care if it flagged on the system. I was done waiting on the world to fix itself. I set house rules. Doors stayed open. Daisy was never alone with anyone new, and everything was on the table. Secrets killed marriages. They weren't going to poison this apartment. The next morning I made eggs, burnt one side, and gave Evelyn the better plate. She tried to turn it down. I told her she could earn her keep, help with pickups, dishes, light errands. Nothing heavy, just steady. "You're sure?" she asked. "I'm sure I need the help," I said. She nodded once, no fuss. Later that afternoon, I helped her get a temp guest pass from building security. They gave her a plastic badge with my apartment number on it. That little card meant she belonged, at least for now. In the quiet that followed, Daisy sat on the floor coloring a postcard for Evelyn's door. I stared at the hallway like it could cough up answers. Landon's name bounced in my head. The way Danielle turned her face when I kissed her that last morning. The 1,000-yard stare in her shower the night we brought Daisy home. All the signs I missed because I was too focused on being steady. I didn't say anything to Evelyn yet, but something had shifted. The fog was lifting, just enough for me to see where I needed to go next. 2 evenings later, after quietly clocking Landon's routine from his agency to the grocery on 86th and York, I rented a car and waited. I pulled the rental around the block and parked behind a rusted-out Civic with a busted taillight. Engine off. Windows cracked. It was already dark out, just past 6. Streetlights buzzed above the storefronts, that thin orange glare bouncing off wet asphalt. Grocery bags swung from people's hands as they shuffled out of the store on 86th and York. I waited. 2 minutes later, he stepped out. Landon Barnes, in a Patagonia fleece like he was the very face of casual fatherhood. Cart loaded. 2 toddlers clung to either side like Velcro, one whining about a snack. The baby was dead asleep under a clear plastic rain cover in the stroller. Landon juggled the whole thing like he'd done it 1,000 times. Guy even smiled at the cashier on the way out. Then she appeared, pushing the stroller behind him. Knit hat, dark coat, same walk. Same exact walk I'd followed down subway stairs for almost a decade of marriage. My stomach clenched before my brain even caught up. Danielle, no doubt in my mind. She leaned over the stroller, adjusted the rain flap, tucked a blanket tighter, then turned toward the car like she wasn't supposed to be dead. I didn't move, just watched them load up and drive away like they were heading back to a life I didn't exist in. I kept 2 cars back, no sudden lane changes, no obvious tail. They turned into Astoria, took a left near a bodega, then pulled into a narrow driveway behind a low brick house with a wooden privacy fence. Small lawn, toys scattered, porch light flickering. I parked on the street and walked up the drive. I wasn't quiet about it. Danielle was unloading groceries with 1 toddler still clinging to her leg. When she saw me, her body jerked like she'd touched a live wire. She reached down and put a hand on the kid's head, like that gesture alone could block out what she'd done. "Danielle," I said, loud enough to make her eyes go wide. Landon came around from the other side of the car, dropped the bag he was holding, and stepped between us. "You need to leave," he said. She didn't speak, just looked at me, frozen. "Get out of the way," I said, teeth clenched. I said, "Leave. This is our home." "She faked her death," I snapped. "You think I'm just going to walk away from that?" Danielle finally said something. Her voice cracked around the edges. I didn't know how else to go. Go where? Away from a kid you promised to raise? From a life you said you chose? I stepped closer. "You staged a crash. You made me and Daisy think you were gone. That's how." She glanced at the baby, then back at me. It was necessary. That word, necessary. "You could have talked to me," I said. "You could have said anything. Instead, I stood on a riverbank watching divers search for you while you played house with this clown." Landon raised his chin like he wanted to square up but knew better. "Watch how you talk." "Oh, I'm just getting started." "Look, we didn't plan it like this," Danielle said, eyes darting. "It wasn't about you. I couldn't stay. The shame, the infertility, your job. I couldn't breathe in that apartment anymore. I felt like a placeholder in your schedule. I laughed once, bitter. So you vanished? You made a kid cry for weeks thinking she broke something in you. I couldn't live with it anymore. I thought if I disappeared, it'd give you a clean slate. Landon cut in, more defensive now. You think I wanted the fallout? You know what it does to your pipeline in this industry, being labeled the guy who steals a married woman? I stared at him. You still holding that torch from college? That girl who chose me over you back then? You never got over it, did you? His jaw locked. Danielle shifted like she wanted to disappear again. I could have hit him. Believe me, I wanted to. My fists clenched on instinct, and for half a second I pictured laying him out on the sidewalk. But I didn't. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because Daisy deserved better. You're both cowards, I said. You didn't just leave. You buried me. You buried your daughter. For what? Fresh groceries in a backyard? Danielle whispered. I'm sorry. She wasn't crying. She didn't look up. I turned and walked back down the driveway, shoes crunching over wet leaves. Didn't look back. Didn't want to see if she'd changed her mind again. I got into the rental and pulled out without signaling. At a red light near Northern Boulevard, I stared at the windshield wipers sweeping steady. That's when it hit me. I hadn't mentioned the cops, or the press, or the footage of her in the car with Evelyn. I didn't threaten anything. Didn't even raise my voice past a certain point. I'd gone there for clarity, not justice, not revenge. I realized something else too. I wanted peace more than a headline. I wanted Daisy to grow up without watching her mom's name get chewed up in some public circus. She already had enough scars. When I got home, Evelyn was sitting at the table with a crossword and a mug of tea. Daisy was asleep on the couch, arms around a blanket like she was hugging the world. Evelyn looked up. Did you find what you were looking for? Some of it, I said. She didn't press, just nodded and went back to her puzzle. I set my coat on the hook, walked into the kitchen, and started washing dishes I hadn't used. The next few weeks hit like cement. I showed up to client calls, opened the right files, said the right words. But halfway through meetings, I'd forget what I was presenting. I'd stare at the screen and feel the silence press in while someone waited on my answer. I blamed poor connection once. Another time I said I had a migraine. The truth was, my brain wasn't in the room. It was still back in that driveway in Astoria, watching my wife vanish all over again. At home, Evelyn held the pieces together. She cooked dinner like it was her job. Nothing fancy, just warm, filling, steady. She and Daisy turned the kitchen into a carnival of distraction. Card games, silly riddles, little doodles on the tile grout that I pretended not to see. Evelyn even rigged up a clothesline across the hallway to hang Daisy's art like it was a gallery. It made the apartment feel less like a recovery ward. One night, after Daisy went to bed and the dishes were done, Evelyn stayed sitting at the table, twisting her mug between both hands. I poured myself a second drink and sat across from her, waiting. She didn't look up right away. Just said, I used to live over on 74th near Broadway. Rent stabilized. Clean little building. Not fancy, but I was safe. She looked at me then, real slow. 5 years back, this brother-sister pair came sniffing around the building, saying they were investors, offering help to older tenants with paperwork. The man called himself Lonnie. Thin guy, always fidgeting. Couldn't hold eye contact for more than 2 seconds. The woman didn't talk much, but she handled the papers. What happened? I asked. They cornered me on a Friday afternoon, said there were liens on the property, and if I didn't act quick, I could lose my place. I didn't want to believe it, but I got scared. I was alone. I signed what they gave me. You call the cops? Next morning, filed a report. Nothing came of it. By then, the deed was transferred. Utilities cut. Locks changed. I slept in my car for a few nights until that died too. After that, benches, church basements, shelters when I could stomach them. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but her hands didn't stop moving, rubbing the same spot on the mug over and over like she could scrub the memory out. I said, "That man, Lonnie, you sure that was his name?" "That's what he gave me." But it felt fake, like a mask. My pulse ticked up. What did he look like? Late 30s, narrow build, short hair, scar on his left wrist. Said he got it hopping a fence as a kid. I didn't say Landon's name out loud. I didn't have to. She kept going. My husband didn't take the street life well. His liver gave out 2 winters ago. Our daughter, she was gone long before that. Gone how? She left at 19, with a biker named Travis, I think. Liked leather jackets and fast exits. Called twice after she left, then nothing. No birthday cards, no holiday calls. Just silence. What was her name? Stephanie. She said it like it still hurt. Bright, mouthy, loved anything loud. She would have been 34 this year. I leaned back in my chair. I didn't say anything at first. Just watched the light bounce off the rim of her mug and tried not to feel anything too big. Finally, I asked, "Would you want to know what happened to her?" Evelyn nodded once. "If it's truth, I can take it." I made a call the next morning. A buddy from a client dinner once mentioned a guy, Carlos Mendoza, private investigator. Used to work with insurance carriers on disability fraud, then split off to run his own thing. No nonsense. Quiet rep. We met in a diner 2 blocks from my office. I slid him $2,400 in cash across the booth, and he didn't blink. "I need answers," I told him. "Real ones, not rumors." "I'll need 10 days, he said. "Maybe less if her name's in a digitized archive. Stephanie Patterson. Disappeared about 15 years ago. Might have had a baby. Or not. No one knows." He jotted it down. "You got a photo?" "No, just the mother sitting at my dinner table." He didn't ask questions about that. When I got home, Daisy was sitting cross-legged on the living room rug with a box of markers. Evelyn had given her an old file folder to draw on. She was halfway through a stick figure family. She held it up when she saw me. "This is me. This is you. This is Evelyn," she said, pointing with a purple marker. "And this is the mystery person." "Why the question mark?" I asked. "Because we don't know if they're sad, or lost, or hiding." I took a photo of the drawing and set it as my lock screen. It felt like a promise I didn't want to break. That night I didn't turn the TV on. I just lay in bed with the silence pressing in, steady like waves. It didn't crush me this time, just moved through me. The next morning I packed Daisy's lunch, ham sandwich, apples, juice box. She asked if Evelyn could walk with us to school. I said sure. We walked out together, Daisy skipping ahead, backpack bouncing. Evelyn wore my old rain jacket and waved at the crossing guard like they'd been friends for years. The whole thing felt simple. Right. Later that day, on the subway headed back downtown, I started replaying the conversation in my head. Lonnie, with a fake name. A scar on the left wrist. A slick talker who shoved old people into legal traps. The image morphed in my mind, and for a second I saw Landon's face stamped over it. I shook it off. I told myself not everything had to connect. Not every ghost had the same mask. But still, I opened a note in my phone and typed one line. Scar on wrist. Track aliases. Watch Landon. Just in case. Carlos called on a Monday. First thing. No small talk, no delay. Just said, "You available this afternoon?" I knew from the tone he had something real. We met at a diner in Queens near an auto shop. Booth by the window. Evelyn came with me, scarf pulled tight, hands shaking even though the coffee was hot. Daisy sat between us with her drawing pad, flipping markers while pretending not to listen. Carlos opened a manila folder and didn't draw it out. Stephanie Patterson, he said. Checked into St. Luke's Hospital under her real name about 5 years ago. No aliases. No record of insurance or next of kin. She gave birth to a girl. There were complications. Internal bleeding. She didn't make it past the second night. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. I caught her elbow before she tipped over. No emergency contact listed. No father on the certificate. No one came forward. Carlos went on. The child was transferred to a state facility within 72 hours, then routed to temporary foster care. I didn't have to hear the name. I already knew. Daisy looked up at Evelyn and asked, "That baby was me, right?" Evelyn didn't speak, just nodded and pulled her close. Daisy wrapped her arms around Evelyn like she'd been doing it her whole life. "We're family, right?" Daisy whispered. Evelyn's voice cracked. "Always were." I looked at Carlos. "You have records?" He handed over the copies. Birth certificate, hospital intake forms, the foster system routing page with Daisy's old case number on the top corner. Same birth date, same hospital file code. It all lined up. The next morning we drove to Yonkers. Cold day, no wind, gray sky that looked like it hadn't decided whether it wanted to snow or not. The cemetery was quiet, rows of flat stones dotted with fake flowers and old flags. Stephanie's marker was simple, just her name, birth year, dash, and date of death. Nothing else. No quote. No scripture. We stood there a long time. Evelyn's knees buckled once, but she didn't fall, just dropped to a crouch and laid her hand on the stone like it was someone's shoulder. "I should have been here sooner," she said, almost to herself. "I should have looked harder." "You didn't know where to look," I said. Daisy knelt next to her, pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat, and placed it against the marker. A drawing of 4 stick figures and a big sun overhead. She didn't explain it. She didn't have to. That night, back at the apartment, Evelyn pulled a small green notebook from the bottom of a box I'd never seen before. She held it like something sacred. "I wrote these," she said, after she left. "Just in case. Someday." The notebook was filled with letters. Dozens of them, handwritten in slanted cursive, addressed to "the child I prayed was somewhere warm." Some were short, just a few lines. Others filled the page. Daisy read 3 of them before bed. She traced each word with her finger like she was teaching herself a new language. She laughed at a line about peanut butter and jelly, healing all wounds, then looked up at Evelyn and said, "Can I keep this forever?" "It's yours," Evelyn said. "Always was." The apartment went quiet in a way that didn't feel empty, just full in a new shape. Later that week, I called a legal aid clinic to ask about Evelyn's ID. They walked us through it. $96 and a few forms, mostly affidavit stuff. Proof of residence, which I handled with a lease addendum and a signed letter on firm letterhead. I added her to my health benefits too. No fanfare, just the right move. Daisy and I built a whiteboard schedule for the week. School drop-offs, DMV appointments, groceries, 1 pancake morning, non-negotiable. She used pink for Evelyn's errands, blue for school, and green for what she called us stuff. On Wednesday, I updated the school parent portal. Called the front office too to make sure they marked Evelyn as known to staff. Until her new ID came in, I had to keep a signed authorization letter on file. Mrs. Geller, the secretary, asked if Evelyn was Daisy's grandma. I said yes. It came out easy. Later that night, I was walking through the hallway and caught sight of the old photo. Me and Danielle on the boardwalk at Coney Island. Summer, cotton candy, her in that oversized hoodie she always stole from my drawer. We were both smiling, squinting against the sun. It used to feel like hope. Now it felt like something else. I looked at the frame and said, "You don't run my life anymore." My voice didn't crack. I meant it. Mostly. The next morning on the subway, I pulled up Landon's agency profile. His headshot had the same half smirk, like he'd just closed a deal that wasn't completely legal. It said he was up for a regional manager role in the spring. That sat in my brain like a pebble in a shoe. Daisy had taped the green notebook cover to the fridge with a sticky note that said, "Family History," in crooked handwriting. Evelyn didn't touch it, just smiled every time she passed it. That Friday, Daisy wrote a letter of her own. She didn't show me the whole thing, just a line at the bottom that said, "I think your peanut butter joke is true." That night, she and Evelyn sat on the couch under the old quilt, reading aloud from different pages. I didn't interrupt. I just watched. Like I was seeing the start of something I hadn't known I was missing. I didn't recognize her right away. Not until she looked up from the conference table and said, "Martin Brown, you still drink that terrible bodega coffee with cinnamon?" Same voice, cleaner edges, same eyes. That dry, amused look she used to give when I forgot a stats formula at Baruch. Her name was on the council memo. Alice Young, brought in to review compliance irregularities for a high net worth account we inherited after a merger. I hadn't seen her in over a decade, maybe longer. The suit was new. The posture wasn't. "No cinnamon anymore," I said. "I've evolved." She laughed, short and quick, then pivoted to business with the clean efficiency she always had. I kept my face steady. She didn't wear a ring. I noticed. Reflex. After the meeting, we stood outside the building in the cold. She tucked her folder under one arm and said, "I read the file. You're clean. Your name shouldn't even be in this." I shrugged. Rumor mill spins faster than due process. You still do that thing where you answer stress with sarcasm? Only when it's working. We grabbed coffee 2 days later. Not bodega coffee, an actual cafe with warm lighting and real mugs. She picked a table near the back. I was halfway through my cup when she asked about my divorce. "Wasn't a divorce," I said. "More like a vanishing act, a hole where a person used to be." She nodded. "That sounds worse." It was. Her story was different. Clean papers, joint custody, no flames. Just 2 adults who'd stopped being aligned. Finn was 10, smart, sarcastic, obsessed with riddles. We set up a weekend to bring the kids to a movie in the park. Daisy and Finn clicked instantly. Within 10 minutes, they were trading stickers and ranking ice cream flavors like they'd grown up on the same block. Evelyn came too. When it got cold, Daisy wrapped her scarf around Evelyn's neck like it was second nature. Alice watched the whole thing and said, "That's a good kid." I said, "She's had good people show up." Later that week, I called to ask Alice something more serious. If she'd be willing to act as personal counsel if the work situation got worse. She didn't hesitate. "I'll have to wall off anything touching your firm," she said. "Separate email, separate retainer." Understood. We signed the engagement letter the next day. Plain terms. She wouldn't work on anything related to my current employer unless it was purely personal. That firewall mattered to both of us. A few days later, compliance tapped me for follow-up. An internal review had flagged one of my accounts from 5 years ago. The accusation? That I'd bent suitability guidance to push a risky allocation. I didn't. But the client had passed away 2 years ago, and the paper trail wasn't perfect. I sat with the audit team, handed over my notes, old call transcripts, calendar screenshots, everything. I kept my tone calm, clipped. I wasn't going to let ghosts rewrite my work. That afternoon, Alice texted, "If you need a firewall, I build them for a living." The next day, Danielle sent an email through a burner account. The subject line just said, "Let's talk like adults." I didn't open it. I archived it without blinking. At night, Evelyn and Daisy kept their new routine. She read aloud from the green notebook, and Daisy decorated the pages with glitter pens and little stars. One night I heard Daisy ask, "Do you think my mom would like this?" Evelyn said, "She would have loved it, honey. You're her best poetry." The air in the apartment felt different, not lighter, just lived in, steady. One Sunday, Alice and I walked through the park while the kids climbed a jungle gym shaped like a pirate ship. I told her the full story: Danielle, the river, the traffic cam, the driveway in Astoria. No filters. She absorbed it without a flinch. Just let it land. Then asked, What outcome are you actually looking for? I thought about it for a second. Boundaries, I said, and for Daisy to know she wasn't thrown away. Alice nodded. That's an answer I can work with. We didn't call it dating. Not yet. We met for coffee again, let our kids talk too loud over pancakes, sent each other screenshots of bad legal headlines. She sent me a photo of Finn, asleep with a book on his chest. I sent her a picture of Daisy holding Evelyn's hand on the subway platform, like it was her job to protect her. One night, after the kids were in bed and Evelyn had gone to her room, I found Alice standing in my kitchen looking at the whiteboard we'd drawn the weekly schedule on. "You're building something real here," she said. "I'm trying. We don't have to rush it. I don't want to." She smiled, soft but steady. Good. That was the deal we made. Go slow. Not because of fear, but because it deserved the time. Because kids pay attention. Because the shape of what we were starting didn't need rushing. It just needed showing up. That next Monday, I got a one-line email from compliance. No further review recommended. No findings. No follow-up. The ghost that had come for my work life died fast and quiet. I closed the message and went back to reading Daisy's homework instructions for her book report. Evelyn walked by and said, "They say third-grade nonfiction is harder than federal regulations." I'm starting to believe that. That night, Daisy drew 4 stick figures on a napkin. Herself, me, Evelyn, and Finn. Alice wasn't in that one. Not yet. But the napkin made it to the fridge all the same. The sun had finally started pulling some weight. April meant less coat and more sidewalk. That Saturday, we hit the farmer's market early. Evelyn wanted fresh spinach, Daisy wanted kettle corn, and I just wanted to get us out of the apartment for a bit. We were halfway through the second row of stalls when Daisy froze and tugged my sleeve. "Dad," she said, voice small but focused. "That's her." 3 booths down, Danielle stood under a blue canopy with a baby carrier strapped across her chest, diaper bag hanging off one shoulder. She was picking through pears like it was any other day. Like the last 2 years hadn't happened. The older 2 kids weren't with her, probably at school or in some weekend program. She didn't look at us, but her body tensed. Her eyes flicked over the apples like she was studying a foreign language. She saw us. She just didn't want to. Daisy whispered, "Should we help her? She looks tired." I knelt so we were eye to eye. "Kindness is good," I said, "but some doors can't be reopened without making new hurts." She nodded, slow. "Okay." We bought apples from the stall on the opposite end and walked the long way home. Daisy held my hand the whole time, not saying much. When we reached the corner by our building, she said, "I understand." Maybe she did. Or maybe she was just giving me space to pretend it was easier than it really was. That night after Daisy was in bed, Alice came by. She'd been working late, hair pulled back, sleeves still rolled from her last client meeting. I poured her a drink and told her what happened at the market. She didn't blink. "Civil, not criminal," she said. "You're looking at fraud by misrepresentation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and possibly a narrowly tailored deception claim tied to her disappearance and the resulting financial harm." "No press," I said. "Just transcripts." "We can keep it quiet and still make it count," she replied, voice calm like she'd already game-planned every angle. A week later, Evelyn and I were walking home from the pharmacy when she stopped dead at the bus stop. Her hand grabbed my sleeve with surprising force. "That's him," she whispered. A man in a navy blazer was laughing with another guy, conference badge swinging from his neck. His hair was shorter, neater, a little gray at the temples. But I knew the shape of that smug smile. The badge said, "Landon Barnes, New York Regional Summit." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "That's Lonnie, from the apartment scam. He used the name Lonnie back then." "You're sure?" She nodded. "Scar on his left wrist, near the bone. He said it was from a fence he jumped as a kid. It's there." I looked. It was. Same size, same spot. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. He didn't just ruin me. He hunted me. That man took everything I had. We filed the amendment that night. Alice drafted a revised complaint, civil fraud, deed tampering, calculated misrepresentation, and tied it to both Danielle's staged disappearance and Evelyn's property loss. She submitted it with a quiet precision I'd only seen from surgeons and snipers. Landon's legal team came back fast, full of heat. His counsel called Alice overreaching, said the link to Evelyn's past was speculative, that her ID had been lost, not stolen, and that Mr. Barnes is a family man with a spotless license. Alice didn't flinch. "We'll need his calendar from the month Danielle's car went into the river," she said. "Also, any known alias used in the last 10 years. They choked on that. At work, the leftover rumor from my own audit tried to crawl back up. Someone stirred the pot again. Anonymous tip to HR. Same old nonsense about risk metrics. Compliance replied with a one-line email. Closed. No findings. That was the end of it. Someone had tried to smoke me out. They failed. Meanwhile, Daisy and Finn went full production mode for Evelyn. They wanted to help cover her DMV fees and new deposit. So they planned a sidewalk art sale with the seriousness of a Wall Street IPO. They used poster board from the dollar store and decorated it with bubble letters and stars and more misspellings than I could correct without ruining the charm. "Art for Evelyn, $1 each," one sign said. They raised $68 on the first day. Evelyn tried to refuse it. Daisy handed her a jar of bills and quarters like it was a sacred offering. "You're not allowed to say no," she told her. "We already voted." Evelyn took the jar with both hands and started crying right there on the sidewalk. Then she wiped her face, looked at Finn and Daisy and said, "You two better help me file this under taxable income." They laughed like kids who didn't know what that meant and didn't need to. They just knew they'd helped. The deposition room smelled like old carpet glue and burnt coffee, the kind that sits on a warmer too long and turns bitter. Danielle sat across from me at a narrow table, shoulders tight, hands folded like she was scared they might shake. The court reporter adjusted her machine, keys clacking in a steady rhythm, and Alice leaned forward with a legal pad already filled with notes. Alice started simple. "Mrs. Brown, did you stage the incident involving your vehicle near the East River?" Danielle's voice came out small but clear. "Yes, I staged it. Landon helped." She swallowed hard. "We planned a decoy call so it looked like I panicked and drove into the water." Alice didn't move. "Why?" "I was scared of being broke," Danielle said. "Scared of never being a real mom. Scared Martin would look at me different forever." She didn't look at me. Not once. Alice nodded like she'd expected that answer. "Did you consider the impact on your husband and child?" "I didn't think straight," Danielle said. "I'm sorry." The words floated there, empty. I didn't pick them up. Then it was Landon's turn. He shifted in his chair like the seat burned. "I had nothing to do with any apartment scam," he said, chin lifted like that made it true. Alice slid a document across the table. "Did you ever use the name Lonnie?" "No," he said, too fast. "Are you sure?" He rolled his eyes. "I mean, I had to be Lonnie for a minute because paperwork gets sticky." The court reporter didn't even pause. Every word went into the transcript like a nail in a board. Alice looked at the judge. "Requesting sanctions for evasive answers." The judge didn't smile. Not once. We weren't chasing jail. That wasn't the point. We wanted restitution, structure, protection, guardrails to keep them from rewriting the story later. Alice pushed for a written admission from both of them, a payment schedule to Evelyn for the deed fraud, and a trust for Daisy funded partly from Landon's upcoming agency bonus. She added a consent judgment trigger, one missed installment, and the court could enforce everything immediately. The negotiations stretched for hours, papers going back and forth, lawyers muttering, Landon whispering angrily at his counsel, Danielle crying without sound. When the math finally settled, the number landed at $186,500 total, $62,500 to Evelyn, over 18 months, $124,000 into a restricted 529 plan and custodial account for Daisy. Locked, audited, protected. Danielle's lawyer insisted on a mutual non-disparagement clause. I agreed, with one carve-out. When Daisy turned 16, she could read the transcript if she asked. Truth didn't need to hide. Landon's regional manager spot evaporated. His firm listed it as pending review for months, then handed it to someone else. I didn't send a single email about it. I didn't have to. When everything was ready, Alice and I signed the stipulation of settlement. Date, initials, signatures. The notary stamped the page with a heavy thunk like a gavel. I gathered my copy, thin, official, final, and felt none of what I'd expected. No victory, no triumph, just the quiet sense of a door gently closing. We left the courthouse without ceremony. Alice walked beside me, not talking, letting the weight settle where it needed to. Evelyn waited for us outside with Daisy, who hopped down from the bench the second she saw me. That night, after dinner, Daisy crawled into my lap with her hair still smelling like the apple shampoo she loved. She looked at me with those steady eyes she got from no one in particular and asked, "Are the bad guys gone now?" I brushed a crumb off her cheek. "They're in their own house with their own choices," I said. "And we're in ours." She nodded, satisfied, and slid off my lap to show Evelyn a picture she'd drawn of a giant dragon breathing stars instead of fire. Evelyn admired it like it belonged in a museum. I watched them walking toward the kitchen, talking about glitter and stickers and dragons with polite manners, and I followed them down the hall without turning off the light. 2 years later, we moved. 3 subway stops closer to my office, a 5th-floor walk-up with light that came in like it meant something. Rent was $3,180 a month. Steep, but worth it for the space and the sun. Daisy picked her room by where the light hit the wall best for her drawings. She said, "This wall wants to be filled," and that was that. The balcony wasn't big, but it held 2 chairs and a flower box she swore she'd keep alive this time. Evelyn helped us unpack, even though her own lease had just started on 117th Street. Small studio, private courtyard, quiet. She framed the new state ID and clean birth certificate and hung them side by side like they were trophies. That weekend, Daisy and Finn put on another chalk fair. Same setup, new signs. One read, "Art to thank Evelyn. $2 if you love her, $1 if you're shy." They made $1,264 in a single afternoon. Strangers tipped extra just for how hard they laughed. Daisy handed Evelyn a giant jar filled with bills and quarters. "It's for your new couch or your groceries or just candy," she said. Evelyn cried. Not loud, just those silent, full-body tears she never let out unless something really hit. Then she wiped her eyes and said, "Heroes wash dishes. Who's on rinse duty?" Finn pointed at himself, like he'd won something. Daisy grabbed the sponge and yelled, "We're the hero team!" Then they both ran into the kitchen like joy was a muscle they'd been training. Alice and I didn't rush anything. No rings, no pressure. We did the real stuff. School pickups, back-to-school forms, grocery runs, late-night strategy calls when she had a brief to finish. Her toothbrush lived in our bathroom. That was enough. Finn started showing up with riddles again. "What is a heart that doesn't beat?" he asked me one morning. "I don't know, but I'll pay $5 for peace and quiet," I said. "It's an artichoke," Daisy yelled from the other room. "Pay up, Dad." Alice laughed so hard she snorted. The apartment felt like it had air in it again. Not just space, air, like we were breathing for real. Danielle asked to meet once more. She didn't demand it. She just asked. I said yes. We sat on a bench near the river. Not the same spot as before. Different stretch, same water. She looked tired, hollowed out. Said she'd read the transcript twice and hated who she was in it. "I don't hate you," I told her, "but we're done. That part of the story is closed." She nodded. No fight left. We signed the last of the settlement papers that Tuesday morning. She walked east. I walked west. No scene, no parting lines. Alice had asked the original detective to quietly close the missing persons file. No media, no noise, just procedure. He agreed, said it was overdue. That night after dinner, Daisy grabbed her chalks and ran out to the balcony. She spent 30 minutes drawing like it was her job, her tongue poking out in concentration. Then she stepped back and called us over. There were 4 stick figures holding hands: me, Daisy, Evelyn, and Alice. Finn stood right next to us with a soccer ball, smiling like he had a plan. "This is our team," she said, beaming. I stood there with one hand on the balcony railing and the other on her shoulder. I was 40 now. My knees cracked in the morning. I still worked more than I should. But when Daisy looked up at me, chalk dust on her fingers and confidence in her voice, I didn't feel like a survivor or a broken version of who I used to be. I felt like home. Let me leave you with this. If someone betrayed you that deeply, would you choose revenge or peace? If you've got hype, please tap it to help this story reach more people. Hit subscribe and like, it really matters. And drop a comment with your take or just say, "Good story. Love you guys."